There really is no middle ground when it comes to Notre Dame in the college football realm. You pretty much either love them or you hate them, and that is perfectly fine. But I see many experts who we have a lot of respect for here just going ahead and penciling in Notre Dame into the 12-team college football playoff already. But to quote the birthday boy, turns 89 today, I believe, Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. Yes, Notre Dame does have Riley Leonard at quarterback, who we know is a dog when he can stay healthy. They actually have some pretty nice pieces on offense at the other skill position groups as well. Jeremiah Love at running back, Mitchell Evans at tight end, Greathouse, Faison, Jordan Thomas on the outside at wide receiver, among some other transfers in who I think can help. But Notre Dame is actually pretty questionable at a position group where they've excelled at pretty recently and really over the long term of history, and that's on the offensive line. They have to replace Joe Alt and Blake Fisher, both tackles who went to the NFL and helped anchor that Notre Dame offensive line last year. And their stud young left tackle replacement, Charles Jaguza, is out for the year now with the right pectoral tear. And while they're going to be pretty sporty on the inside at guard and center, being weak at the tackle with their schedule, going to put a little bit of a damper on what could be a big season. Now, Al Golden should put out another top 15 defense, but if 11-1 is the number that Notre Dame has to get to make the college football playoff, which we believe it is here, I'm just not seeing it right now. Week 1, Notre Dame's going to walk into Narnia, a.k.a. Kyle Field, to play Texas A&M, who has one of the best defensive front sevens in all of college football. And when you have unproven tackles and a new quarterback who hadn't played with an offensive line that's had time to gel together, that puts a ton of pressure on Notre Dame. And really, they're the only one in that game with immense pressure because they get no automatic bid to the playoff by winning their conference because, well, they aren't in one. Notre Dame drops that game, they'd pretty much have to be perfect the rest of the way. That includes games against Louisville, Georgia Tech, Florida State, USC, and others. Now, I'm not saying Notre Dame is going to be a bad team. It's quite the contrary. I think they're going to be pretty good. I just don't think their offensive line is going to allow them to be great, even if they do catch some breaks on the injury front from here on out. So go ahead. Roast me, Notre Dame fans. It's cool. It's all love here. But don't count me in the group saving a spot for the Fighting Irish when it comes to the college football playoff at large bids just yet. David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, wish they'd played Notre Dame, even though it wasn't their fault. They don't really play anymore. My brother, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver Blaine Crane. And David, I don't think anybody's up here hates Notre Dame.
No.
You know, there's been years where I've given them the benefit of the doubt, and I think they're going to have a good ball club this year. I don't see 10-2 or 11-1 with the struggles I think they're going to have, especially early on the line of scrimmage on the offensive line.
Well, it's going to take at least 10-2, like we said yesterday. I mean, 11-1 for Notre Dame, you're automatically in. No one can fault Notre Dame for not playing in a conference championship. 11-1 gets in. 9-3 to me is a non-starter. 10-2. There's going to be a lot of teams at 10-2. I think you can have an honest conversation about. But for overrated, are we using the coaches poll? Is that what we're going off of?
I'm using coaches poll. I'm using, people we've had on this show even recently that have put Notre Dame. I mean, pretty much everybody's made their predictions except us because we wait until that last week of fall camp because I need to know if C.J. Baxter from Texas tears his ACL in practice and is now out. If Charles Jaguza, the starting left tackle at Notre Dame, tears his right pec and he's now out. But a lot of people, I would say most, have Notre Dame, including the coaches poll, which
so
that was the biggest
poll.
shot. That,
okay,
I mean,
so
I think it's an aggregate, but
so 7. Again, the game at Texas A&M. That's why it's so huge because after that, the tough game at Louisville, you get at home. The tough game against Florida State, you're going to get at home. USC is on the road, and that's a rivalry game at the end of the year. But right now, I think Notre Dame, is better than USC, especially bringing in Riley Leonard. The team that I was going to go with for my most overrated, just based off this coaches poll, is Florida State at 10, and I don't think it's by a whole lot. And again, I feel the same way about like what you were saying with Notre Dame. I have a lot of respect for Notre Dame. I like when Notre Dame's good at football. I feel the same way about Florida State, and I do think that they were sort of robbed last year, going undefeated, not being able to make the college football playoff. But at 10 right now, they had 10 players from last year's team getting drafted into the NFL. One of those being the quarterback whose injury kept you out of the college football playoff. But not just that. I mean, 2 players on the defensive line. Jared Verse was a first-round pick. They also had Braden Fisko in the second round. Yeah, both those great wide receivers. I mean, Keon Coleman, I think, is going to be a star for the Bills. Got drafted in the second round. Jaheim Bell, Trey Benson, running back, 3rd round to the Cardinals. The other wide receiver, Johnny Wilson, went 6th round to the Eagles. So I don't think it's by a whole lot of spots right now that Florida State is ranked too high, in my opinion, at 12. But I do think I would bring them back just a little bit, especially when we're considering. Let's just talk about the non-conference for a second. The non-conference schedule for them: Memphis, Notre Dame, who we just mentioned, and Florida. You know, I mean, Florida's going to be at the end of the year. That one is going to be in Tallahassee, but they're going to have to go to Notre Dame. And I don't think Memphis is any sort of walk in the park. And that's with road games at Miami, and then you get Clemson at home. So, again, they got they're 5 spots better right now than Clemson in the coaches poll and 9 spots better than Miami. I was a little surprised to see that.
Yeah, I was surprised too. And Blaine, I want to make sure people understand that overrated doesn't mean bad. Like, nobody's saying Florida State's going 5-7. I'm not saying Notre Dame's going 6.
Oh no, they could win the ACC and get a first-round bye. They
but
do that.
But with the expectation levels that a lot of people have on some of these teams, I don't think it's. I would think a lot of people would probably have Florida State. A lot of people would have Notre Dame. There's Colorado, I'm sure, is one. Who do you got?
You know, I like your pick, and a lot of this to do with me is just quarterback play. I'm gonna go with Penn State at sitting at number 9. And you look at Drew Aller, you look at his stats from last year, great numbers, but in the biggest games and the biggest moments, what was Drew Aller? He's lost. He's a little kitty in a big city, right? Like, his head's cut off. He doesn't know where he is. And let's look at this Penn State roster. Look, you bring back your Thunder and Lightning. When it comes to running back, you'll be good there. Skill position, you lose Lambert to who? Your leading receiver. He goes to Auburn from the transfer portal recruiting. You're bringing a 5-star tight end. Congratulations. I don't think that's going to be a huge difference. On the defensive side of the ball, you're going to have good players. Obviously, you're going to be good up front. But the thing about it with me, you look at their schedule, no Michigan, no Oregon. The Big Ten's not waiting for Penn State to figure it out. Right? The Big Ten is only getting better and better, and we're going to see new identities from team. We don't know what we're going to see from Iowa, not the same team. There's certain things in this conference right now where I wouldn't be surprised. Week 1 against West Virginia, that Penn State barely nicks out this game. Washington is not going to be an easy game. 3 to 4 losses from Penn State, I wouldn't be surprised, because James Franklin and Drew Aller have never done what? Won the big game. Won the big game, and they'll never do it. They'll never do it. You can bring in a new OC. You can bring in a new DC. As long as Drew Aller is your quarterback, I don't think Penn State will ever get over the hump with him.
Well, when you look at Penn State's schedule, I would be shocked if Penn State lost 4 games with that schedule and what they returned. Let's bring that back up. And I'm with you. I'm not sold on Drew Aller. He's one of the guys that has to prove it to me, and he's running out of time to do it. They did baby-proof him in the big games last year, whether that's them not trusting him ability-wise, or them not, wanting to take any chances or give him a chance to go win the game. I don't know which one, but either of those isn't good. But when I look at Penn State, I feel like eventually, and going away from divisions, I think it probably helped Penn State more than just about anybody. Now, adding Oregon does make it harder. It doesn't make anything easier. Adding Washington doesn't make it easier, even though I think Washington they're going to be a shell of their former selves with all that they've lost, including their head coach to Alabama. How many people have this goes back to what I've been saying on social media, and some people agree and some people don't, which is good. Dissent moves us forward. I really think the Big Ten may get the most teams in the college football playoff.
Yeah, one of those callers said that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not because of the Big Ten is the best conference, but I think it's because they're the second best conference. And what do I mean by that? Well, the more good teams you put in a conference that has to play each other, I don't care if it's 8 games or if it's 9 games, the more carnage you're going to have. You're going to end up with more 9-3s than you are with 10-2s. I can make the argument that the Big Ten is a lot top heavier than the rest of the other conferences, and they all don't play each other, especially now that Big Ten East has been changed. So, Penn State going 10-2, I think is very doable for them. You look at them getting Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and possibly Michigan or one other team in, because you're not going to have the carnage in the middle like you're going to have in the Southeastern Conference, where a lot of these teams play each other, and there's more of them that are good. So the Penn State one's interesting to me because I think more people think that Penn State are going to blow it or can't win the game, as opposed to a lot of people anointing Florida State automatically out of the ACC, or that Notre Dame's just automatically going to get a spot there. So I don't disagree with a lot of the points you made, Blaine. I just don't know if people are holding Penn State to maybe the same level of expectation that they are with some of these other teams.
I agree with what you're saying about the possibility for the conferences, and it really takes a nuanced understanding of college football and especially the expanded 12-team playoff to really understand that. I think what'll offset that is an understanding of strength of schedule when the committee starts to evaluate at the at-large bids. I really do think that that's just going to come.
Well, it's got to be part of it. I'm just wondering how much everything weighs out in the end, because you used the example of Liberty last year having one of the easiest schedules in college football, and they weighed them going undefeated. They would have been the group of 5 team that would have been in under these new rules. Yet Florida State goes undefeated in the ACC, beats 2 SEC teams, wins their conference, goes undefeated, and doesn't get to make the playoffs. So I'm just wondering what's going to happen when all of a sudden there's 10-2 Penn State.
I know.
Then there's 9-3 Missouri, but Drew Aller sprains his ankle and is going to miss 3 weeks, and Brady Cook is healthy.
Or even if he's healthy. And I mean, Missouri's a bad example to use because their strength of schedule out of all the teams we're talking about isn't the toughest. I mean, if Missouri goes 9-3, they're not making the playoffs.
I'm talking Missouri goes 10-2.
Oh, well.
Penn State goes 9-3, beats, one of the teams that's going to make the college football playoff. See, that's where I think a little bit of the aftertaste of what happened with Florida State last year is going to have a little bit of an effect on the at-large.
I think so,
the automatic ones take care
Which is why I was going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to have Florida State being overrated at 10, because if they make the college football playoff and they don't win the ACC, they're going to be right around that range, 10, 11, and 12, to be considered. Yeah. At which case, again, does 10-2, and all this assumes that these teams are going to beat the teams that they're supposed to, right? Like, when we're evaluating this, it's kind of like, well, they'll certainly beat this team, and that's just not the way college football plays out. And I think that's especially what you're talking about when you refer to carnage in the SEC, is like at some point Arkansas and Auburn and South Carolina and Florida, they're just going to beat teams.
So Kentucky's going to beat somebody
who are better than them.
It just happens. This is really, and this isn't any shocking news or breaking news. And we want to know what you think. The phone lines are going to open 2:45 p.m. Central. Who's the most overrated team in the country heading into this year? 1-855-236-3228. I think where the battles are really going to come down to is when you get to these 9-3, 10-2 teams, and especially the ones where, hey, let's say a team finishes 10-2, but they don't make the conference championship. And then a team that is 10-2 makes it and loses. Now, one team's 10-3, one team's 10-2. They didn't play each other in the regular season. One played in a conference championship game and lost it. Who gets in? Like that's
why this Michigan-Texas non-conference game is the number one non-conference game in the country to me.
It could be the teeter-totter one that puts people over the brink. Hey, YouTube, if you dislike pizza and ice cream, don't subscribe to this channel.